My name is Mike Howard. I'm the lead pastor here, and I'm fired up to be with all of you as we kick off a new series called Paper Tigers. Paper Tigers is the English translation of this ancient Chinese word, jiaohu, which has been used for centuries to describe things in our world that seem scary and powerful, but are actually weak and no real threat to us at all. And what we're going to do over the next 5 weeks is take a look at 5 of the biggest fears Americans say they have. 5 of the baddest, scariest lions that are out there in the jungle we call life waiting for us. And we're going to identify how they are holding us back from the lives God says we were made for. And make no mistake, some of these things are real and they're powerful. But God promises us that no weapon formed against us will stand, and we know that greater is He who is in us than he who is in the world, which means in our lives we have less reason to fear than we think. Not because we're strong or we're powerful. No. We are no match for these tigers, but they are no match for Him. Where we see teeth and claws, God sees merely paper. And what I want to do over the course of this series is teach us to see the world through His eyes. I want to be clear right off the bat. This is not a self-help series. This is a self-sacrifice series. I think it'll be helpful, but I'm not going to stand up here and give you 3 simple steps to avoid all difficulty and trouble in life and make all your wildest dreams come true. That's just not how the world works, and anybody who tells you differently is peddling lies. Sorry, Pedro. But I want us, each of us individually and all of us collectively, to find liberation in God from the areas of fear and anxiety that are imprisoning us, that are robbing us of our futures, that are keeping us from the incredible adventure of sacrificial impact that God created every single one of us for. Because it's crazy but true, all of us live with fear even though we know it has a limiting effect on our lives. It wouldn't take any of us very long to answer the question, what is one thing fear has kept you from doing even though you desperately wanted to? We all got answers. One of those answers for me is going into my attic. I really want to put an antenna up there so I can actually watch local TV channels at my house, but I'm afraid of getting rabies from the winged rodents that live there. Yeah, a lot of you have pets at your house, but they're dogs and hamsters and fish. I got more pets than you. My house came with a free colony of them. They're going to be gone soon, but I'm really good at catching them. That has nothing to do with the message, but if you need help, call me. But for real, fear is a big deal. It's a future-based emotion that causes us to be upset right now about something that might happen later. The idea that we might suffer loss or we might get into a future and not have everything we need, that pain or suffering might be around the corner causes a great deal of anxiety to us as humans. That's why the future is one of the most universal sources of fear in our lives. And some of us are here right now in a season where a whole lot of change is happening. We're not sure how or where things are going to settle. Some of us feel like the world shifted underneath our feet when we lost a job, lost a loved one, lost our health care, and the future looks blurry at best. Some of us are about to go to college or about to send kids to college, and it's a whole new thing. Some of us are in a place relationally where we don't want to be, and we're wondering if things are ever going to get better, or wondering if we're ever going to find someone or just be forever alone. Some of us can feel the pressure at work, and we don't know what it's going to look like 2 months from now. Some of us have loved ones who are headed down destructive paths. Some of us have babies on the way, and we have no idea what's going to change in our lives when they get here. Some of us look out at an increasingly divisive culture and get scared about where it's headed and what's coming down the line. The list goes on and on and on, but one thing is certain. The future is a big, scary tiger, and it is lurking out there waiting for every single one of us. And the very real fears we have about it can be crippling. But this morning I want to help us see the future through God's eyes so we can understand that it's a paper tiger. And we're going to do that by looking at the story of a guy whose entire life changed in an instant. In a moment, he got removed completely from the life he had known and thrust into a future that was completely different, and he was not prepared. He was terrified. His name's Joshua. If you have Bibles with you this morning, you can open them up to the book of Joshua. We're going to be in chapter 1. It's right towards the beginning, sandwiched between Deuteronomy and Judges. And if you don't have Bibles with you, you can cue it up in the Revision app or follow along on the screen. If you don't own a Bible, we have a bunch of them, and we have kids' versions at the Next Steps table. We would love for you to take one. It's our gift to you. But Joshua 1, we're going to read the whole story. Then we're going to walk back through and dig in to see what God is teaching us about how we can find liberation from the anxiety that lives inside of us about the future. And the first few words of this book, I just want to warn you, start about as morbidly as a book can possibly start. The first 3 words are after the death. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. But first things first, if you think you're in a spot right now in your life where you got reason to fear, where you're stressed out about the future, you got nothing on Joshua. He's on the verge of a panic attack. You know how we know that? God had to tell him 3 times in 7 verses to be strong and courageous. 3 times in like a 30-second conversation. And the last one, I love it, that he says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous, because it totally reminds me of conversations I have with my kids all the time. Like sitting there at a soccer game, and I'm looking at this kid saying, hey, what matters is to have fun. Just have fun. Do your best and have fun. Listen to your coach and pass the ball and try and score goals, but have fun. And then you can see on their face that it is just not registering. Looking there at a kid who's about to puke, and it's 8-year-old soccer, which is 100% not worth puking over. And so I got to get serious. I gotta be like, hey, look at me. Did you hear what I said? Have I not commanded you? Have fun! Parenting is an interesting journey, and someday I hope to be good at it. But this is my life, and this is totally what God's doing with Joshua right here. He keeps telling him all these promises, keeps walking him through where he wants to take him in the future, and you just know Joshua's face the whole time is this. Because God gets to the end, and he has to say, hey, are you paying attention? Look, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. But listen, it's not shocking that God has to say this 3 times in this moment. Because when God shows up to talk to Joshua, this is a complex situation. Like he starts by saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them to the Israelites. Okay, and this is way crazier and way more difficult than most of us get at a first glance and a cursory reading. Okay, for starters, if there's one thing Joshua could have asked God to tell him, like one thing he desperately needed to hear from God in this moment, one piece of advice that he could have gotten, it was not, Moses is dead. Like Joshua's looking for some clarity. That part's already clear. He knows. And God shows up in this moment where Joshua's desperate for some sort of vision of what the future is actually going to look like and says, Josh, Moses is dead. You ever feel like God tells you what you already know and not what you want to know? Like, this is going to be a problem. I figured that one out. How do I get out of the problem? Okay? Because Moses dying is a big problem for Joshua. His world just got rocked. Moses was the leader of this entire nation. Politically, economically, he was the judge. He did everything. He's the leader. And the Bible tells us that Moses was a friend of God. Moses went and he talked to God. Like he'd go over to the tent and he'd talk to God, and when Moses came back, he was glowing. You guys realize as a leader, you don't even have to say anything brilliant or do anything good if you're glowing. You just got to walk around the camp like this. And everyone's going to follow the glowing guy, but that guy's dead. No one understands the implications more than Joshua. You ever been around somebody awesome who made you look awesome? Like been on a team with somebody who was really good and just made the whole team good? How many people have championship rings because they were on LeBron's team? Or they were on Michael Jordan's team? Or Tom Brady's team? Like so many of them. But then sometimes what God does is he takes that awesome person and he picks them up and he shifts them somewhere else, and all that's left is just some. No awe. That's Josh. Right? And then God looks at him right there and he says, now then you go cross the river. His whole life, Joshua didn't even think he could move forward without Moses. But God's telling him, listen, Moses cannot go to the place I want to take you. You got to move forward. The problem is Joshua has no idea how to move forward. Because what's he been doing for the last 40 years? Wandering around a desert. This is his entire leadership training, is wandering around the desert. Like he was Moses' apprentice. He's the next leader. When they had staff meetings on Mondays, Moses called him in and was like, all right, I'm going to teach you how to wander. Moses was like a professional wanderer. He was really good at it. But he's like, someday I'm not going to be around. This is what you do. In the morning, you pack your stuff. And then you wait for that pillar of fire to become a cloud. And when it moves, you just get out in front and follow it. You think you got that? We'll go over it again next Monday. And then when it stops, stop. I'm trusting you, Josh. So his entire history is being trained to lead wanderers through a desert, and then God looks at him and says, hey, Moses is dead. Now then, you cross the river. It's war time. Joshua didn't know anything about warring. All he ever learned was wandering, and so he panics. And not only that, but the Jordan River, there are some times when it's really easy to cross. There's dry seasons where you just kind of walk across that bad boy, but God in his infinite wisdom picked flood season to send Joshua across the river. So he's standing there, he's on the banks of the river looking at it like, first thing, I'm in over my head. Second thing, this whole nation is about to literally be in over our heads. I picture him having this Oregon Trail moment. You know the one where you try to ford the river and it does not go well? Only in Joshua's mind, as he's looking at these raging floodwaters, the message that pops up to him is, you've lost 4 priests, 1 Ark of the Covenant, 10 Commandments, and the presence of God. Oh! But you guys, I love this story. I love this story because for any of us who have ever felt like the future is unknown and terrifying, for those of us who feel like that right now, there are some things God says to Joshua and some promises he makes in this little conversation that can teach us how to be set free from the anxiety we have about what's coming and walk toward the places God has for us. The first thing we need to learn is found in verses 3-6, when God tells Joshua, I'll give you every place where you set your foot. I will give you every place where you set your foot. As I promised Moses, your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, from the great river, the Euphrates, to the Hittite country, to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you, nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead the people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. And most of us in our lives, we want to get right to that part where God says, I will give you, and then stop, and just sit there waiting for all the blessings we're hoping that he'll pour into our future. But that is not the end of the sentence. He says, I will give you every place where you set your foot. God has a future he wants to give you, but you have to step into it. First thing I want us to see this morning is this: if we want to conquer the tiger of the future, you have to participate in the promise. So many of us, when times get difficult, whenever we encounter a situation that's anything less than ideal, anything less than we wanted, we get really frustrated, angry at God even for allowing it to happen. And our entire solution to move forward is just to sit there and whine. Like, God, fix this. Why are you fixing it? And we do nothing. Frankly, if we're honest, we just want him to sprinkle some pixie dust on us, to go ahead and lift us right up out of our situation and put us in the place where we think we ought to be, instead of believing that he has us right where he wants us. We love the idea of God fixing our situation. We're not quite as crazy about the idea of God fixing us in the middle of our situation. About him using the difficult times in our lives to transform us, to change the way we think and change the way we understand who he is and how faithful he is and whether or not he's with us. Sometimes the only way to learn that lesson, the only way to figure out who God is and who he made us to be is in the middle of the fight. God tells Joshua, I will give you everywhere that you set your foot, but not 1 inch more. You want to know the sad truth? That whole vast territory that God described to Joshua, he did not conquer it all. Not because God stopped, but because Israel did. Got scared and quit and wondered why they didn't get the whole blessing. And I can't help but think about how often in my life that may have happened. I wonder how many times in all of our lives that's happened. We were going forward and then we got scared that there might be giants ahead, and our fear of the future caused us to stop and retreat. We sit there thinking that we lost the battle when all we really did was quit before it was over. I know in my life, and I'm guessing it's true in yours too, it's easy to have anxiety about the future and want Jesus the magician and not Jesus the Messiah. But in these moments of difficulty, in these moments where the future is uncertain, God is up to something so much bigger than we realize. He's calling us forward and promising us that what we'll find in the unknown is him. And when we walk into that, we learn who he is and who he made us to be. Fear will always try and hold us back from that, always. There could be death ahead. But avoiding death and chasing life are not the same thing. If we want to chase life and we want to find purpose and we want to know this God, and we want to be liberated from the worry that lives inside of us about the future, we got to participate in the promise. Walk toward God knowing we don't have to know what the future holds if we know who holds the future. That's what God tells Joshua. He says, I know you can't see clearly what lies ahead, but I promise if you will just keep walking, you'll find not just that I know what lies ahead, but that I'm already there. The future is not just something I know. The future is a place I already am. Go, and I'll go with you. And then he gives them another step for conquering this fear in verses 7 and 8. He says, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. This is powerful stuff, but it's not very ambiguous. God's being pretty clear. It's like, look, Josh, you don't know what's going to happen when you get to the other side of the river. You don't know what life's going to look like on the other side of the river. You don't know how you're going to get fed or what bits of your world are going to be totally changed when you get to the other side of the river. But this much you know my law. You know how to live the way that I told you. I hardwired you to live when I knit the universe together, and I want to invite you to follow that. If you live that way, you will find less fear in your future. Second thing I want us to see is this: if we want to overcome our anxiety about what lies ahead, we have to commit to God's commands. Commit to God's commands. Look, part of the reason God is less concerned about your future than you are is that he's a little bit more worried about what happens in you than what happens to you. The world's a messed up place. There are going to be some terrible, awful things that none of us would want that happen in every single one of our lives. And they make us nervous, but they don't make him nervous. Because he promises us he doesn't waste those times. He doesn't waste those spaces. He's already there, and he will meet us right in that place to change us and transform us and give us a bigger, better picture of his love. He's going to meet us where we're broken and bless us right there. If we'll just commit to living the way that he created us to live. There's a profound beauty in this. There's profound beauty. The future becomes way less frightening when we commit to God's commands because we have a total shift in thinking. Instead of frantically and desperately trying to get God onto our agenda, trying to make sure that God cares about the stuff that we care about, our minds and our lives get shifted on to his agenda. And that's a better future and a better place to be. And then God closes this section by driving it home. It's one of the most famous verses in the Bible. If you're a churchy person and you grew up in church, you probably had to memorize it as a kid. I did. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. I love that verse, but I had a problem with it for a long time. When I was growing up as a kid, I heard it a bunch, but always outside of its context. All I knew was that I was commanded to be strong and courageous, and in the moments where I was weak and full of fear, which is a lot of moments, was and is. You guys, I have spent too much of my time, too many of my hours, too much of my energy on fear in this lifetime. I have. But all these times that I felt it welling up inside of me, I thought, oh man, I broke that command. I guess I'll try harder next time. I don't know how, but I'm not very good at this command. I'm just going to try better. And I decided that maybe what I was lacking, maybe what I needed was more faith, because faith is the opposite of fear. Right? No, not right. Wrong. Wrong. I read an article this week that talked about how faith was the opposite of fear. And I'm not going to throw the author under the bus, but that's dumb. That's just not true. Okay? For what it's worth, courage is not the antidote to fear either. There's a whole other concept in play. And if we want to get it and be strong and courageous in the places where we are now timid, we have to understand this. Fear is not the opposite of faith. Fear is faith. It's just faith in the wrong things. I mean, we can't help it as human beings, but look ahead and say, well, what if? Fear is when we put our faith in our what ifs. Fear is believing that the worst of our imagination is more powerful than the love of God. It's faith in the wrong thing. But there is this word that the Bible uses from beginning to end, over and over and over again, when it talks about fear, when it talks about being liberated from the prisons that our anxiety keeps us in. And it's kind of a crazy word. It's not one that we expect, because it's not one that we use in our culture in relation to fear. It's not bravery. It's not courage. It's not faith. It's love. Love. If you want to be set free from your worry about what's blurry up ahead, you got to live like you are loved. This is what God is trying to hammer home for Joshua as he faces the incredibly difficult task that lies ahead of him. He's saying, Joshua, live like you're loved. I'm with you. And I know something inside of you wonders if I'm at some point going to not be with you, if there's something you can do where I'm going to leave. But you got to understand, this kind of love is my guarantee that I will always be with you. I'm going nowhere because I love you. And I think if we understand nothing else this morning, if we could just get this one through our heads, it would make a massive difference. 1 John 4:18 says there is no fear in love, because perfect love drives out fear. There's no fear because this perfect love of God is unconditional. It's not based on what you do or where you go. It's unilateral. He decided to love you, so he's not going to leave you. And his love expels fear from our minds and our souls. God's love is fear repellent. One of my favorite passages in the entire Bible is Romans 8:35-37. It says this: who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall trouble or hardship, persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. No. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. More than conquerors. There's a battle ahead. And let's be straight, the world is a messed up place. There are many battles ahead. But they got nothing on us. I don't care what's coming. What pain lies around the corner. None of it, not one bit of it, gets to win. Because our pain and our suffering does not get to write the final chapter of our story. We are more than conquerors. Some of us are sitting here, we've been fixated on a fear about our future. Maybe for good reason. Maybe not. But there's just something that lies ahead, whether we can see it or we can't, that's causing crushing anxiety inside our souls. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that fear isn't legitimate, or tell you it's a tiger you can handle. But I will tell you that God is bigger and that he loves you. And if you can understand that mega love, you can die to that worry. God's love makes our souls inhospitable to terror. Terror cannot live where love lives, so live like you are loved. I know some of you doubt that you are. There's some people sitting in here right now thinking, yeah, but I don't know that I am loved. Like, I know we read this Bible story and God promised Joshua that he was loved, and God promised Joshua he'd be with him, but Joshua's like a Bible character. He must be some sort of perfect guy, and I've wandered a long way. I've had questions about God for a long time. I've done some stuff in my life. I'm not even sure what I think about the whole thing. I've made some mistakes. I'm like way over here, and God is way over there. There's no way that he loves me. I am not Joshua. But check it out. That's exactly what Joshua was thinking when God showed up. He was sitting there thinking, I am not Moses. Maybe God loved Moses. Moses glowed, but I'm not Moses. He's like, God, I don't know you like Moses knew you. And this is what God is saying in response to that in Joshua 1:9, when he says, be strong and courageous. Because of my love, I'm never leaving you. And in verse 5, when he says, as I was with Moses, so I am with you. This is God saying to Joshua, listen, I know you don't know me like Moses did yet. I know you got a long way to go. There's some room for growth in this relationship, but I know you like I knew Moses. So let's go. And God's saying the same thing to you. He knows you like he knew Moses. He knows you like he knew Joshua. He knows you like he knows every person in this room, and he's inviting you to let his perfect love cast out fear. There's this thing about fear. It cannot be erased. It has to be replaced. So I invite you this morning to let God's love replace the anxiety that lives inside of you about your future. Just let it in there, because God's love is aggressive. It gives fear something to fear. My challenge this week is just to walk out of here and start treating your future like a paper tiger. To participate in the promise by moving forward, even when you're not sure what lies ahead, because you're confident that wherever you get, God is there. To commit to his commands, because chasing holiness that pulls us off of our agenda and onto his means walking towards the best possible future for our lives, and to live like we are loved, because his love casts out fear and creates incredible courage in us. Listen, I know it's not easy. Of all people, I know. If you're like me, you've lived with fear all your life. It feels almost like it's a part of you, and you don't know what it even look like to live without it. And old habits die hard. It's difficult not to look out and look ahead and think, what if, but what if, and find ourselves once again putting our faith in our what ifs, believing that the worst of our imagination is more powerful than the love of God, allowing ourselves to be upset now about things that might happen later. But my prayer is that you would walk out today knowing with every fiber of your being that our God is bigger than our what ifs. Our God is bigger than our what ifs, and that makes the future a whole lot less scary. Because if we can live like that's true, if we can become convinced that our God is bigger than our what ifs, then it does something really profound to fear every time it threatens to well up inside of us. It gives us this entirely different perspective. Instead of deciding that it's worth putting our faith in and then allowing it to imprison us and limit us, we can recognize that the places we feel fear are usually the places where our spiritual enemy is moving against us, because the darkness does not want us to do the things in this world that God made us to do. When we feel scared about the future, it's because the darkness trembles at the thought of our lives being unleashed for the purposes of God in the world. Fear is the prison that our enemy designed to keep us from ever walking towards that, from ever stepping out in faith for the life God wants us. But understand this. When we know who our God is, and when we know that our God is bigger than our what ifs, we can be set free from that prison and we can walk towards it We not only don't have to fear the future anymore, we can become a source of fear. We can create a future where the darkness and brokenness and hatred and injustice all around us that does not want the light of God to shine and the mission of God to be accomplished through us is afraid of who we are and what God is going to do through us. The same Jesus who makes the darkness tremble walks with us, and there is nothing that can separate us from his love, which means your future is a paper tiger because nothing, not one thing, good or bad, gets to write the last chapter of your story. Only the love of God gets to do that. Will you pray with me? God, thank you for your love. Thank you that in the midst of our brokenness, though so many of us have walked away, though so many of us have compromised what we thought was the best future for ourselves, so many of us are broken, that you meet us right there in that place and give us a bigger picture of who you are and how you love. I pray, God, that this week all the fear and all the anxiety and all the worry we have about our future would vanish as your love takes its place. That we'd participate in the promise by walking forward knowing that you're there. That we'd commit to your commands, chasing your future rather than ours. And that we would live like we are loved so that you can use us to do the things you created us for in the world. We love you so much. We thank you for holding our future and writing the last chapter of our stories. In Jesus' name. Amen.